Take a deep breath and let's hear a story about Tom, a black cat who loved the moon and found his forever home by comforting a woman in need. Tom was a sleek black cat with eyes that reflected the silvery moonlight like polished gemstones. His fur, as dark as the midnight sky, allowed him to blend into the shadows of the city streets he called home. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle, Tom would find a quiet rooftop or secluded corner from which to gaze up at his beloved moon, finding peace in its gentle, constant presence. The cool cobblestones beneath his paws had become familiar over the years, as had the rhythm of the city, the morning bustle, afternoon lull, and evening calm. Tom moved through his urban domain with graceful confidence, accepting small offerings of food from kind-hearted passers-by, and finding shelter in forgotten nooks during rainstorms. Despite the hardships of street life, there was a serene contentment in his independence and in his nightly ritual of moon-watching. The neighborhood Tom frequented was a mix of old apartment buildings with window boxes full of fragrant herbs and small shops that closed early in the evening. The scent of jasmine and lavender often floated on the night breeze, mingling with the distant sounds of soft conversation and occasionally gentle music drifting from open windows. In this urban sanctuary, Tom had carved out a life that, while solitary, was rich with sensory pleasures. Kate was new to the neighborhood, having moved into a small second-floor apartment with large windows that overlooked the quiet street below. Her apartment was sparsely furnished but cozy, with soft throw blankets draped over a well-worn sofa and potted plants that reached toward the sunlight. By day, she worked as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm, bringing color and life to clients' visions with her creative touch and meticulous attention to detail. For months, Kate had poured her heart and soul into her work, staying late and taking on extra projects to prove her worth. The rhythmic clicking of her keyboard and the soft brush of her digital pen across the tablet had become the soundtrack to her days as she designed logos, brochures, and website layouts. Her dedication was unwavering, her passion evident in every pixel and palette choice she crafted with care. Her colleagues respected her quiet determination and artistic eye, often seeking her input on their own projects. Her supervisor had praised her recent campaign designs, and Kate had allowed herself to believe that her position was secure, that she had found not just a job, but a place where her talents were valued. The comfort of routine and the satisfaction of creation had brought a sense of stability to her life that she cherished. The small apartment had slowly begun to feel like home, with photographs of smiling family members adorning the walls and the scent of cinnamon and vanilla from her weekend baking filling the rooms. Soft instrumental music often played in the background as she tended to her growing collection of houseplants, each one bringing a touch of nature's tranquility into her urban dwelling. Kate found peace in these simple pleasures and creating a sanctuary amid the city's constant motion. Each evening, Kate would prepare a cup of chamomile tea, its sweet, apple-like aroma rising with the steam, and sit by the window watching the day fade into night. The gradual dimming of the sky from azure to indigo to midnight blue fascinated her, as did the way the streetlights created pools of golden illumination below. From her window, she could see the moon rise, and she often found herself lost in contemplation of its serene, silvery face. The neighborhood had a gentle rhythm that Kate had come to love. The elderly couple who walked hand in hand each morning, the children who played hopscotch on the sidewalk after school, the local baker who placed fresh loaves in the window at dawn. These small, consistent moments created a tapestry of community that made her feel connected, even when she spent most of her time alone with her art and her thoughts. Weekends were spent exploring the local farmers market, where the vibrant colors of fresh produce and the earthy scent of artisanal breads awakened her senses. Kate would run her fingers over ripe peaches, inhale the spicy aroma of cinnamon-dusted pastries, and listen to the melodic voices of vendors calling out their daily specials. These sensory experiences grounded her, reminding her to appreciate the present moment. Tom had noticed Kate soon after she moved in, observing her with curious yellow eyes as she carried boxes up the stairs to her new home. He had watched as she transformed the empty space into something warm and inviting, glimpsing her through the windows as she moved about inside. There was something in her gentle movements and solitary evenings that resonated with his own nature, creating an unspoken kinship between them. Sometimes when Tom found a particularly good vantage point for moon gazing, he would catch sight of Kate at her window, her face turned upward toward the same celestial body that captivated him. The shared moment of appreciation, though unknown to her, created a silent bond between them. In those quiet instances, they were not cat and human, but fellow admirers of the night sky's most magnificent jewel. The neighborhood children had given Tom various names over the years: Shadow, Midnight, Lucky, but none had stuck because he belonged to no one. He was a gentle presence in the community, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it, simply existing in harmony with the urban landscape around him. The local shopkeepers would leave small saucers of water or bits of food for him, respecting his independence while acknowledging his place in their shared environment. The changing seasons brought new sensory delights to Tom's world: the crisp scent of autumn leaves, the hushed silence of snowfall, the sweet perfume of spring blossoms, and the warm, sun-baked stillness of summer evenings. Through it all, the moon remained his constant companion, waxing and waning in its eternal dance across the night sky. Its gentle light seemed to whisper secrets that only Tom could understand. Tom's fur had grown thicker as autumn deepened into winter, his body adapting to the dropping temperatures. He found warmer spots to curl up during the day, a sun-drenched windowsill, a vent exhaling warm air, a sheltered corner near a bakery's oven. The city sounds muffled under blankets of snow, creating a peaceful silence that allowed the subtle crunch of his paws on frost-covered ground to be heard as he made his nightly journey to watch the moon. The relationship between the residents of the neighborhood and its black feline inhabitant was one of mutual respect and gentle coexistence. Tom never caused trouble or demanded attention, and in return he was allowed to move freely through the streets, a silent guardian of the night. His presence had become as much a part of the local landscape as the old oak tree in the small park or the wrought iron benches along the sidewalk. The day everything changed began like any other for both Tom and Kate. She rose with the sun, prepared for work, and spent the day immersed in designs, while he found patches of sunlight for napping and hunted for morsels in the narrow spaces between buildings. Neither could have anticipated how their paths would cross that evening, or how that crossing would transform their solitary lives into something richer and more meaningful. The atmosphere at Kate's office had felt different. That morning hushed conversations behind closed doors, worried glances exchanged between colleagues, an undercurrent of tension that hummed beneath the usual creative energy. Kate had tried to focus on her current project, a rebrand for a local coffee shop, but the knot of anxiety in her stomach grew as her supervisor called one employee after another into her office, each returning with pale faces and forced smiles. When it was finally Kate's turn, the words budget cuts and last hired, first to go, fell like heavy stones into the still pond of her life, sending ripples of shock and fear outward from the impact. The praise for her work, the assurances that this wasn't a reflection of her talent, none of it soft, the blow of suddenly finding herself unemployed in a competitive field, in a city where rent didn't care about talent or potential or broken dreams. The walk home had been a blur, the familiar streets now seeming cold and indifferent to her plight. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her shoulders, making each step heavier than the last. When she finally reached her block, the fading daylight illuminating the same scene she passed every day now, transformed by her changed circumstances, Kate's composure finally crumbled, and she sank onto a bench beneath a street lamp. Tears fell silently at first, then with increasing intensity as the reality of her situation washed over her, the rent due next week, the student loans that wouldn't wait, the competitive job market that might take months to yield another position. The soft glow of the rising moon went unnoticed as Kate buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs that released not just today's pain, but the accumulated stress of months spent trying to prove herself. Tom had been making his way toward his favorite moon-watching spot when the sound of gentle weeping reached his sensitive ears. Curious, he padded silently toward the source, recognizing the woman from the window who, like him, often gazed at the moon. Something about her distress called to him, stirring a compassion that transcended the usual boundaries between species, a recognition of a fellow soul in pain. With a natural grace that was as much a part of him as his midnight fur, Tom approached the bench where Kate sat. He observed her for a moment, head tilted slightly, as if considering how best to offer comfort, then made his decision. With a graceful leap, he landed softly on the bench beside her, his presence announcing itself with the subtlest shift of weight on the wooden slats. Kate felt the movement before she saw its cause, lifting her tear-stained face to find a pair of luminous, yellow eyes regarding her with what could only be described as understanding. The black cat sat perfectly still, neither demanding attention nor shying away from her gaze, simply offering the quiet solidarity of his presence. Fresh tears welled in Kate's eyes, these born not of despair, but of the unexpected tenderness of this moment. "Hello there," she whispered, her voice slightly hoarse from crying. Tom blinked slowly in response, a gesture of trust in the language of cats. Hesitantly, Kate extended her hand, allowing him to decide whether to accept her touch. After a moment's consideration, Tom leaned forward to sniff her fingers, then gently butted his head against her palm, giving permission for the connection they both somehow knew they needed. The simple act of stroking the cat's silky fur began to anchor Kate back to the present moment, drawing her away from the spiral of anxious thoughts about the future. Tom's deep, rumbling purr vibrated against her fingers, creating a soothing rhythm that matched the cadence of her gradually steadying breaths. The tension in her shoulders began to ease as she focused on the tactile sensation of soft fur beneath her fingertips. As the evening deepened around them, Kate found herself telling Tom about her day, about her fears and disappointments, about the uncertainty that now loomed before her. The cat listened with attentive stillness, occasionally blinking his understanding or pressing his head more firmly against her hand when her voice trembled. There was something profoundly comforting about confiding in this silent companion who offered presence without judgment or advice. The moon had risen fully now, its silver light bathing the street in a gentle glow that transformed the ordinary urban landscape into something almost magical. Tom's eyes reflected the moonbeams as he shifted his gaze from Kate to the sky and back again, as if inviting her to share in his nightly appreciation. Following his lead, Kate looked up at the luminous orb hanging amid a scattering of stars and felt something shift within her, a perspective widening beyond her immediate troubles. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she murmured, her voice steadier now. "No matter what happens down here, the moon keeps its course." Tom's purr intensified as if in agreement, and he settled more comfortably beside her, a warm presence against the cool evening air. Together they sat in companionable silence, two beings finding momentary peace in the eternal dance of celestial bodies above them. The sharp edges of Kate's despair had softened by the time they'd spent an hour in quiet contemplation of the night sky. Her problems hadn't disappeared. She would still wake tomorrow unemployed and uncertain, but something had changed in how she held these worries. They seemed less overwhelming, less defining, when viewed against the vast backdrop of the universe and in the company of a creature who lived fully in the present moment. As a cool breeze rustled through the autumn leaves, Kate realized she couldn't bear to leave this newfound friend to the mercy of the increasingly cold nights. The thought of returning to her empty apartment alone suddenly seemed unbearable, while the idea of bringing this gentle spirit home with her felt inexplicably right. "Would you like to come home with me?" she asked softly, knowing the question was as much for herself as for the cat. Tom looked at her with those wise moon-reflecting eyes, and she could have sworn he nodded slightly before standing and stretching leisurely on the bench beside her. When Kate cautiously gathered him into her arms, he settled against her chest without resistance, his purr a constant, comforting vibration against her heart. The weight of him, solid and warm, felt like an anchor in a stormy sea, not a burden, but a ballast. The short walk to her apartment was transformative, each step taking her not just closer to home, but toward a new chapter she hadn't anticipated when she'd left for work that morning. The tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving behind a strange sense of possibility that had been absent in the depths of her earlier despair. Sometimes, she reflected, comfort comes from the most unexpected sources, at exactly the moment we need it most. Kate's apartment welcomed them both with its familiar scents and soft lighting, the space somehow feeling more like home with Tom's presence beside her. She prepared a makeshift bed from a folded blanket and set out a small dish of water and some tuna from her pantry, watching with quiet delight as Tom explored his new surroundings with cautious curiosity, his whiskers twitching as he cataloged each new scent and sound. That first night established what would become their shared ritual after. Tom had eaten and Kate had changed into comfortable clothes. They settled by the large window that offered a clear view of the moon. Side by side they sat in peaceful silence, the gentle rhythm of Tom's purring mixing with Kate's deep, relaxed breathing as they watched the silver orb make its journey across the star-studded canvas of night, their shared appreciation deepening the bond that had begun on a tear-stained bench. In the days that followed, Kate threw herself into job hunting with renewed determination, drawing strength from the quiet companionship that now greeted her when she returned home. Tom seemed to sense when she needed encouragement, appearing at her side with perfect timing when rejection emails arrived or when anxiety threatened to overwhelm her. His warm weight against her leg or his gentle headbutts against her hand would ground her, reminding her to breathe, to persist, to believe. Two weeks after Tom entered her life, Kate received a call from a small design studio that specialized in sustainability-focused brands. They had seen her portfolio online and were impressed by her aesthetic and attention to detail. The interview went well, with Kate feeling a confidence that came from knowing she had someone waiting for her at home, regardless of the outcome. When the offer came at a higher salary than her previous position, she and Tom celebrated with a special dinner and an extended moon-watching session. As autumn deepened into winter, their home evolved to accommodate both its inhabitants, a cat tree by the window for optimal moon viewing. Our home evolved to accommodate both its inhabitants, a cat tree by the window for optimal moon viewing, soft beds in Kate's favorite reading spots, toys that brought out the playful side of her usually dignified companion. The apartment that had once felt too quiet now resonated with the subtle sounds of shared life, the soft padding of Tom's paws on hardwood floors, his contented purring, the quiet conversations Kate had with him as they moved through their days together. Kate's new job brought not just financial stability, but a creative fulfillment her previous position had lacked. The collaborative environment and meaningful projects aligned perfectly with her values, and she found herself flourishing in ways she hadn't anticipated. Sometimes, in quiet moments of reflection, she would marvel at how what had seemed like her lowest point had actually been the doorway to something better, a truth she might never have discovered without Tom's intervention. Each evening, regardless of the day's events or the weather outside, Kate and Tom maintained their ritual of moon watching, finding in that shared contemplation a meditation that soothed away the day's stresses and brought them both into peaceful alignment with something larger than themselves. Through waxing and waning, through clouds and clear skies, the moon remained their constant companion, a silent witness to their evolving story. As the seasons turned, their bond deepened beyond what Kate had thought possible. Between human and animal, a connection based on mutual respect, comfort freely given and gratefully received, and the wordless understanding that sometimes passes between souls who have found in each other exactly what they need. Tom, once a solitary wanderer, had become her most loyal friend, while Kate had become his safe harbor in a sometimes harsh world. On particularly clear nights, they would sometimes leave the apartment and walk to a small neighborhood park where the view of the stars was less obscured by city lights. Kate would spread a blanket on the grass, and Tom would settle in her lap, his purr vibrating through them both as they tilted their faces skyward. The cool night air carried the scent of distant pine and recent rain, creating a sensory cocoon that enhanced their shared moment of tranquility. Spring brought new energy to their household. Kate took on freelance projects in addition to her full-time work, her creativity flourishing under Tom's watchful eye. He would often sit beside her desk, offering silent encouragement as she sketched concepts or refined designs. The steady presence of his companionship seemed to unlock something within her, a confidence and joy in creation that translated into her most inspired work yet. Their first anniversary as companions was marked with a special celebration, a new window seat installed specifically for optimal moon viewing, cushioned with soft pillows that would accommodate both of them comfortably. That evening, as they sat together watching the full moon rise above the city skyline, Kate reflected on how completely her life had transformed in a single year, all because she had been seen and comforted in her moment of deepest despair. Word of Kate's talent spread through the design community, bringing opportunities she could once only have dreamed of: a solo exhibition of her personal artwork, collaborations with respected brands, invitations to speak at creative conferences. Through it all, Tom remained her grounding force, the constant companion who reminded her to pause, to breathe, to look up at the moon and remember what truly mattered in the grand scheme of things. Their story began to inspire others as Kate occasionally shared glimpses of their life together on social media. The black cat who always seemed to be looking at the moon. The transformative power of unexpected connection. Messages arrived from people who had been moved to adopt animals of their own or who had found comfort in establishing their own moon-watching rituals during difficult times, creating a ripple effect of gentle healing that extended far beyond their cozy apartment. In quiet moments, when the apartment was bathed in moonlight and Tom's purr was the only sound breaking the peaceful silence, Kate would sometimes marvel at how the universe had brought them together, how her darkest moment had contained within it the seed of such profound joy. There was a special kind of gratitude that came with this awareness, a deep appreciation for the mysterious ways in which comfort finds us when we need it most. As they sat side by side in their favorite window seat one perfect spring evening, the full moon casting its silver light across their intertwined forms, Kate gently stroked Tom's sleek fur and whispered the truth they both already knew. "We saved each other, didn't we?" Tom's slow blink and deepened purr seemed to say yes, that in finding each other, they had each found exactly what they needed, not just companionship, but a shared appreciation for life's simple joys, for quiet moments of beauty, and for the healing power of simply being present with another's soul beneath the watchful gaze of the moon.